From Arizona to Delaware, Tucson journalists follow an undocumented woman and her child across the country.
And then being in Washington, D.C., in the Capitol, I remember you made you mentioned to, it was in Spanish, but I picked up on it. You mentioned to Karen that we were in the Capitol of the United States. I think that was kind of a surreal moment.
And has the influx of unaccompanied minors from Central America affected border security? One analyst weighs in.
That's where our border security problem comes in, is we're not tending to the bad guys while we're dealing with a legislative backlog and an inability to act.
This is Arizona Week. It's been 2 months since tens of thousands of undocumented women and children began making the trip to the U.S. Last week, 2 journalists from the Arizona Daily Star met a Guatemalan woman and her 6-year-old daughter. The 22-year-old woman agreed to let a reporter and photographer join her and her daughter on the last leg of their journey. Here's my interview with Perla Treviso and Mike Christie of the Arizona Daily Star.
I had been there starting at probably around 3, and there was 7 women with their kids. They had just been dropped off by Border Patrol, and was just talking to all of them, and something clicked with Karen. She seemed outgoing. Then I sat down and started talking more about her, learning more about her story, and asked her if we can come along, and she said yes. So we asked if they still had bus tickets that took us exactly the same route, and bought our tickets, grabbed a bag, and we were ready to go.
And at that point, you brought your photographer over and said, "Hey, Mike, come meet Karen," and he's coming along too.
Yeah, that was me. I really diverted to Perla for, handling all the conversations. I can understand a little bit of Spanish, and so I showed up to the bus station around probably midday, 3 or 4 o'clock, and Perla had been there for several hours. And so I showed up, and she was sitting with Karen and Lizeth, and I sat on a bench in front of them and just kind of listened to the conversation. It was all in Spanish, and I think it went on for like 10 or 15 minutes, and I was kind of like looking at Perla, like, are we good to go? Or I was like, is this good? Because I thought, well, this is going to fall through. It's not going to work. We're not going to find someone who's going to be open to us going along with them. And so finally, Perla turns to me and she says, they're okay with us going with them. And I said, oh, okay, where are they going? And she says, Delaware. And I went, well then, that's on the East Coast. And so from there, we found 2 tickets, the same, and off we went.
And the bus made stops every 4 hours. And how many states did you cross through?
12.
12 of them.
What was it like being in a bus? Neither one of you had ever really ridden a bus for that long of a time period, so that had to have been a unique experience for you.
There were some psychological highs and lows. I think you're on a little bit of an adrenaline high as soon as you leave. You're like, holy cow, we're really doing this. And we leave late at night, and I think towards, when we got into El Paso, it was early in the morning, I think it was 1:30 or 2 o'clock, and we got in there, and I looked at a map and felt how long we had been traveling, which had seemed like a long time, and saw how scant a distance we had actually traveled from Tucson, and saw the remainder of it. And that's really kind of when it settled in, and you kind of try to prepare yourself psychologically while also knowing, we have a job to do and a story to tell.
What was that like, Perla? Asking questions, but Mom Karen is really tired. Her daughter Lizeth is 6 and she's exhausted herself. Did you have much opportunity for the Q&A?
No, I waited. So another another lady was also traveling. She got off in Mississippi, right? So I did not want to kind of ask all the personal questions with other people around. So I waited until after Mississippi. So I waited until day 3. By that point, I was feeling a little anxious because you're spending all this time and you haven't really talked to them. So basically before that, it was just when we got off, we would just have a normal conversation, and then from there I would get back to the bus and start taking notes from what we had talked about. But my first actual sit-down Q&A was in Dallas or something like that. It was the 3rd day that we were there, and I knew that I had to get it done before we got to Delaware because then there would be other things going on.
Sure. And Mike, there had to have been a challenge for you as a photographer with a pretty good-sized camera, kind of respecting their privacy.
Mm-hmm. That was one thing. I spoke a little bit with my editor about how I was going to attack it. And, on any other general daily assignment, I attack things fairly aggressively. To fairly large, expensive camera bodies are on either shoulder, and I can put it on a high burst rate and fire off frames like it's a machine gun. And with this, the attack was really almost more of an old school approach. I took one camera body, a wide-angle lens, and a mid-range lens. Nothing that was really bigger than maybe say out to here. And so, like you said, it's a little bit of a challenge. We have the understanding that they know we're going with them, so they're okay with us. And I tried to further that along with the little Spanish that I knew. I could keep little conversations going with it, stops. But the challenge more so laid with the other passengers on the bus. I didn't want to draw attention to myself because an expensive camera body kind of sticks out. And so I kind of had to meter my shots. I couldn't fire off 6, 7 frames a second. I put it on my camera on a slower kind of safety mode. It's a little bit silent. And so I could fire off 1 frame at a time, 2 frames at a time, look at it, adjust the focus. Because I really didn't want to draw attention to myself, kind of respect a little bit of their privacy, but they've also let us in on these moments, and I didn't want to let them slip away.
Emotionally, there had to have been some really tough times when mom is worried about the safety of her child, whether or not they're going to make it all the way to Delaware. How did you kind of filter through that process of respecting their time and their emotion during this probably pretty terrifying experience?
I think the hardest part for them was from Guatemala to Mexico. I think having the volunteers at the Greyhound station made a huge difference for them because they thought that they were just going to have to navigate this on their own. And there were people there, with a smile and, giving them hugs and walking them through the process. So I think, and also because we were in the bus with them, they never really felt they were going to get lost. I think we all at some point felt we were going to get lost or the bus was leaving without us. But I think the fact that we were there was a little reassuring. So unfortunately, I think the most difficult part for them was the Guatemala to Mexico, and we were not there to see that. We just had to ask questions to kind of narrate that part of the story through their voice. But I think that the hardest part from Tucson to Delaware was just missing her family, and we do say there was on Wednesday, it had been a week since she had left, and she was just kind of pondering, and I asked her later on, what were you thinking about when you were looking out the window, and she said that today's a week that I left my home, and I don't know when I'll see my parents again. So I think it was more of an emotional, more than a scary feeling for them at that point.
And Mike, capturing that emotion, you did very well in the photos that we've been able to see. That was, though, a tricky part for you because we've got a 6-year-old girl who doesn't know what her future holds and a mom who's embarking on this journey.
Like Perla said, Lizeth was kind of very outgoing. She slept a lot, but the time she was awake, she was kind of furiously coloring in a coloring book or feeding Cheetos to a stuffed penguin she got from the volunteer center at the Tucson Greyhound station. And she was really receptive. I think younger kids are kind of enamored with a camera and somebody kind of paying attention to them. And I think after a while, she kind of learned to, she doesn't have to look at me. She can kind of ignore me and kind of do her own thing, which is what I need. And, the moments between her and mom, oftentimes they were asleep, groggy, and you could see some type of emotion in them. And I think the lead photograph from this assignment was a picture. It was early morning light, and she's kind of laying asleep, and Karen's kind of leaning over her and kind of like a daze in and out, which was almost pretty much the whole trip for them. So it's just kind of this moment that they shared between them, and it kind of embodied their trip from Tucson to Delaware.
It was pretty amazing how quickly they learned to ignore Mike. They stopped paying complete attention to him, having a camera, shooting photos of you. That was pretty incredible. That, how you often have difficult people staring into the camera. They got over that pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So then you get closer to Delaware. Does the emotion start to feel different? Karen and Lizeth, are they excited all of a sudden?
Lizeth was mostly tired. I think the morning before we got to Delaware, she's like, I don't want to travel anymore. She was done. She was exhausted, and she just wanted to be over with it. And I think Karen, a little bit of the same thing. I think it was more exhaustion than excitement until we got to the bus station or to the bus stop, and she saw the brother get out that minivan. There, you really saw the emotion. And you think about a year and a half, and you're like, oh well, a year and a half. it's not that long, or for some families a lot longer, but seeing the emotion between the two siblings and between the brother and Lisette, you would have to think that they hadn't seen each other in much, much longer time. I mean, they were very, very, very excited to be able to hug each other again.
And Mike, respecting that privacy of that very moment, but also capturing it so beautifully, that embrace.
Yeah, a tricky part there at the end was we were kind of banking on her brother and the family being receptive to having us along to get more of their story. So the last thing I wanted to do when he hops off a minivan and hugs Lisette after a year and a half was to be in his face with a camera firing off frames. And while I may have sacrificed missing an initial moment, I was able to get the moment with him and Karen when they were hugging, and he was quite emotional. And so I think by giving that little bit of respect, a barrier to them, made them feel probably a little bit more comfortable with us. Because up to that point, it was kind of up in the air if they were saying, yeah, come on along with us, or no, you've kind of come too far, so stay here.
What about those moments of being inside a store, watching little Lisette eat a popsicle and then, Chinese takeout food? That had to have been kind of an unusual experience, and now you're photographing the things that some of us take for granted.
Yeah, my approach kind of going into it was putting them in the context of America, what we know to us. And so I think one of the pictures didn't run was a picture late at night, and you see Karen's silhouette, and there's a KFC logo going by. And to that point, I kind of kept trying to make a moment to frame things. And we were going through Barstow, Texas, and there's a water tower amidst, just kind of empty desert West Texas land. And so there's a picture of Karen kind of staring out the window while you have this kind of Americana flying by in the windshield. And, in Walmart, Walmart is kind of quintessential kind of America. It's common to us and not so much to them. And so I figured a picture or two in there while trying to stay low and not drawing attention to myself was kind of quintessential to that as well.
And Perla, in the days that you said, okay, we're here, now we're going to watch for a little bit, you got the sense that the family just wanted to be a family again.
Yeah, I mean, it just happened so that the first day that as soon as we got there, it was food, having dinner together and taking baths, and it was really cute that Lisette right away wanted to wear the new clothes that they had gotten for her at Walmart. But they wanted time. You could tell they wanted time for themselves, and it's not the same thing to have a reunion with two journalists in your face. And so even though they had been very open and receptive to us, you kind of got that feeling that now they wanted that downtime to really talk about their family back in Guatemala, what they're saying, about their feelings, about their future. So we left them that Thursday evening.
Perla, you've been covering border issues for a really long time now. Where does this fare in your experiences?
I think this is the deepest, more in-depth story that I've ever told, just because of the time that I spent with her. I had done other traveling projects, but you kind of go in and out and don't spend the night with the family. And here you were able to see, go into the bathroom with them and see Lisette brushing her teeth, things that just because of where we were, I got to see a lot more. And the main objective with this story was really to show the complexities of immigration, that is not one single reason why people are coming. And in order to solve this issue, it has to be approached from different ways. That doing things here in the U.S. is not going to solve the problem on its own. That, with this family, the father came in the late 90s and sent money back, which gave them a better education, but that still wasn't enough. Then the brother left, and now she left. And it also made me think of the cycle of immigration. Instead of Lisette being left behind and maybe eventually coming, she's kind of coming already with the mom. And I wonder what that's going to play in the future immigration trends with all these women and children traveling. So that was kind of like the main thing for me, just showing the complexities of why people decide to leave. And I wanted to know I wanted to know that as well.
Was there a fine line that you had to walk as journalist and someone who happens to be a fellow passenger on this bus? Did either one of you feel that way at any point?
For example, I would have loved to capture them really being, getting lost with the bus system, and Mike having captured that in photos. But at the same time, you're a human being, and you cannot go to someone and when they ask you, do we get off here, and say, I don't know, you tell me, because I'm the journalist and I'm supposed to only observe and capture that moment. So I think as a journalist, I would have loved to really be that fly on the wall and see how if they miss the bus or if they get on the wrong one. But at the same time, I cannot pretend to not know that I'm getting off this bus just for that. So that was a tough kind of, you did not want to actually like lead them, but at the same time, you did not want to pretend you didn't know what was happening just so you could have that paragraph on your story. I don't know how you felt.
Yeah, I think I accidentally found myself slipping into passenger mode as we got further on, maybe in the deep South in Mississippi and Alabama, trying to find seats because I was worried about having a seat close to them because the bus was packed. There were no empty seats by the time we reached the middle part of our journey. And so there would be times where we were shuffled way back, and it was questionable as whether I would be sitting across them, in front of them, or I'd have a view of them at all. So I'd find myself trying to like coordinate seating arrangements when really it's like, oh, we need to kind of let this all play out by itself. And then being in Washington, D.C., in the Capitol, I remember you made you mentioned to, it was in Spanish, but I picked up on it. You mentioned to Karen that we were in the Capitol of the United States. I think that was kind of a surreal moment there.
Berla says the mother and daughter are due to appear before an immigration judge next month. To another side of this story now, and the question of whether or not border security has suffered as a result of the influx of immigrants. Here's my interview with Sylvia Longmire, an author and border analyst. Supply and demand. I mean, it's long been said that Americans want the labor, they want the illicit drugs. How much of that is playing a role in what we're seeing happening at the border right now?
Oh, it's a huge role. And the whole thing that's going on at the border, obviously anything related to the border is going to be largely politicized. What nobody really wants to talk about is how both Democrats and Republicans are benefiting from cheap labor, from illegal immigration. You have Democrats that some people will say, well, these folks are going to support the Democratic Party, and later on, if they become eligible to vote, all of a sudden you have this huge support base because the Democrats are the ones that are catering to this growing Latino population. But then on the Republican side, you have large businesses that are benefiting from cheap labor. You have huge farms and ranches that are benefiting from illegal labor, and all of those play into the financial support that goes to the GOP. So they don't want to see that go away, but it's difficult politically speaking to say that. So you have the demand is coming from both sides, no matter how it plays out on TV or in the news. That demand for cheap labor is there, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. And as long as there are jobs here that American citizens aren't interested in doing, willing to do, or able to do, there's always going to be a supply to fill that. And a lot of times that supply is going to take the form of illegal immigrants to do that labor from other countries.
How does that supply and demand, though, affect border security, which is something that is continuing to be the topic as we see these children coming across the border?
Sure. One of the main problems with the surge is that there's no trying to segregate the threats from the non-threats is one of the big issues. And you take a look at just even more generally, more broadly speaking, what is border security? What does a secure border look like? You have these 50,000, 57,000, I think was the latest count of unaccompanied minors and children and family units that are coming across the border. That's obviously placing a huge strain on social services, but are they really a threat? That is kind of an administration problem for the administration to deal with, but is that a security issue? It highlights the fact that so many people can just come across and we can't stop them from coming. But then again, the real security issue is while all of these folks are being dealt with on an administrative level and being processed through paperwork and placed in detention centers for a little while, I'm more worried about the real bad guys, the violent drug smugglers, people associated with groups like Hezbollah or other terrorist organizations. Who's tending to them while all these agents are being pulled off the line to deal with an administrative issue that can be dealt with at the legislative level? So in my opinion, that's how it's affecting border security, is that we're getting so bogged down on something that isn't being handled at the legislative level, whether you want to call it comprehensive immigration reform or something totally different. That's where our border security problem comes in, is we're not tending to the bad guys while we're dealing with a legislative backlog and an inability to act.
Are you concerned that some of these children may in fact be members of these gangs from Central America?
Taking a look at what I've seen so far, I think maybe a few, maybe a dozen or so, a couple of dozen have been identified by their tattoos and everything. And that's, I think, to be expected. But overall, at least the numbers that I've seen, that's only a couple dozen out of the 57,000 that have been apprehended. So it makes really good headlines. And of course, it's always a concern when you have gang members coming over. There have been some reports that some recruiting activities have been happening in the detention facilities, and I think that's going to happen. Some graffiti that has been found in the bathrooms and such in the detention facilities. I think it's always a concern, but these are not the routes that gang members traditionally take to come into the United States. They don't need to insert themselves with these kids and these families. They're getting in and out. A lot of them have dual citizenship, and they don't have an arrest record just yet, at least not here in the United States. So they can come and go in other parts of the border without having to get involved in this whole mess. So I'm always concerned about gang members coming here from Central America, but as far in the context of the crisis that's going on in South Texas right now, I think it's not as much of a concern as it should be elsewhere.
In Texas, the governor wants to send the National Guard to the border. There are people who are watching this very issue unfold and saying it's not getting people. These people are surrendering. So why send the Guard to the border?
There's a history of sending the National Guard down to the southwest border, and this was in 2006, 2008, and there were roughly 6,000, I think was at the peak, 6,000 National Guard troops that were sent down. And it was very effective. What a lot of people don't understand is that National Guard troops cannot enforce civilian law. So they're not allowed to arrest anybody, apprehend anybody. When they act as extra eyes and ears. They're doing a lot of other jobs as well, and they can be very helpful. But if they catch anybody or see anybody, they have to turn them over to Border Patrol. And especially the minors and the families that are turning themselves in and just saying, hey, we're here, process me and give me my permiso. So if they start turning themselves in to Border Patrol agents, that's the same thing that's going to happen. Once they turn themselves in to the soldiers are just going to hand them over to Border Patrol, and it's a lot of the same. So unfortunately, it's just for show. I think it's a lot of political posturing. And if that's what Texas feels that they need to do to make their constituents happy and feel more secure, I get that. But as far as a practical solution, not even close.
And joining me now with the latest developments is Fernanda Echavarri, reporter here at Arizona Public Media. Fernanda, let's start with the number of children. Here in Nogales, here in southern Arizona, it's dwindled quite a bit.
Yes, when you and I toured the facility about a little over a month now, there were about 1,000 children in there. As of earlier this week, there were less than 10. And even before that, we stopped seeing the children basically bussed over here or flown over here from Texas quite a few weeks ago. So the Texas influx stopped a little bit ago, and now the number in general of children, unaccompanied children apprehended in the Tucson sector is down significantly, and Border Patrol officials tell me there's about less than 10 kids in there. Then again, there could have been other kids that were dropped off at that processing facility this morning or will be taken there tomorrow. So.
What led to that decrease in numbers suddenly? Is it because word was starting to spread?
It's difficult to pinpoint what exactly did that, but there was this wave that happened in Texas. So we have to remember that as far as Tucson goes, we continue to have unaccompanied children cross here illegally on a daily basis. But what we were seeing a couple months back was what was happening in Texas, and that was the wave that was coming up. It's impossible to tell whether that's not going to happen again in a month or so.
Okay, so those children who were here, where are they now? They're no longer under DHS. They were in Health and Human Services, but not necessarily still at this point?
That's right. So the children that we saw, the thousands that came through that Nogales processing facility, were in the custody of the Department of Homeland Security, as you said. Now, after they leave their custody, they go to Health and Human Services, the Office of Refugee Resettlement. We got numbers earlier this week, actually, from the Office of Refugee Resettlement that said about 30,000 unaccompanied children are no longer under their custody, and they have now been released to what they call, quote-unquote, sponsors. So these sponsors could be a true sponsor that is not related to the child, but is sponsoring the teen or young child, or it could be a family member, it could be a parent. So if we were talking, if you just want to look at the numbers for a second, we had about 52,000, close to 60,000 unaccompanied children. About half of them are no longer in the federal government's custody. They have been released to people. Now that is anywhere across the US. In Arizona, 186 have been released to sponsors. That doesn't mean that we're talking about the children in the Tucson shelter, because they are still in the custody of Health and Human Services. So the children are everywhere, essentially. The children that you and I saw at the Nogales warehouse could be in Maine, could be in the Tucson shelter, or could be at home with a parent here in the U.S.
And then there are those children, as you said, under Department of Health and Human Services in sort of temporary home shelters. Okay.
Yes.
All right. You did some work here at Arizona Public Media on the radio side of things, and talking about that community response and how it's really helped foster some of their lifestyle here since they've arrived.
Yes, and particularly I focused on the work that is being done at the Greyhound station. As we've been reporting, thousands by now of Central American women, most of them from Guatemala, that arrive with their children and are apprehended crossing the border illegally with their children, sometimes infants, some of them are pregnant, are taken and processed by Border Patrol, and then they're dropped off at the Greyhound station in Tucson. That is because the law says they cannot deport them right away, so they drop them off at the Greyhound station. And the story that I did this week for radio focused on politics aside, policy aside, what is the Tucson community doing to help these women and children? And I spoke with a man that he and his partner have taken in more than 45 women and children for the night. So when the buses are not leaving that day for these women to go to places like Tennessee, Florida, Delaware, as we heard from Perla earlier today, or earlier in the show, these women and children need a place to sleep. So there are Tucsonans that are opening their doors to complete strangers, giving them a place to sleep, a hot meal, allow them to take a shower. Some of the volunteers I spoke with talk about what that really does to somebody, is to be able to clean yourself physically and also emotionally, to give you a break from these are women and children that have been traveling for weeks, thousands of miles. So the Tucson community is really stepping up. Catholic Community Services is now the lead organization taken in the volunteer effort. And they talked about how they have people showing up with their pickup trucks full of donations, diapers, baby clothes, and hygiene items for women. So the Tucson community has responded in a way that I think maybe didn't surprise some of us, because Tucsonans do those things.
Sure. And Fernanda, I meant to ask you, do we know how many children were in process through that Nogales facility?
Yes, the Department of Homeland Security told me from May 31st to July 22nd, so Tuesday, a total of 5,479 unaccompanied children went through that Nogales facility you and I visited.
And on any given day, you said roughly maybe 700 or so.
Roughly about 800, actually, yes.
Okay, Fernanda, thanks so much for your excellent reporting and your analysis. We'll continue to look for your reports. And that's our program. Thank you so much for joining us. Be sure to join us next week as we dive right back into the upcoming primary. I'll be moderating a Republican gubernatorial forum. We'll have those highlights. For all of us at Arizona Public Media, I'm Lorriane Rivera.